The night before our big move, the air was thick with anticipation and exhaustion. My parents had spent the entire day packing up our lives into boxes, leaving little time for my younger brother Brian and me to process the change. As we lay in our beds, the house felt eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Suddenly, a thunderous crash jolted us awake. A drunk driver had slammed into the house next door, the impact reverberating through our walls. We could hear the anguished moans of the driver, a haunting sound that sent chills down my spine. He stumbled closer to our rooms, his footsteps heavy and erratic, panic filling the air. "Stevie, did you hear that?" Brian whispered, his voice shaking with fear. I nodded, heart racing. Listening intently, we heard him mumbling in agony. "The dolls, the black apparition, the road." His words were slurred, filled with terror, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. My mind immediately flashed back to the horrors of East Smoot Road, the tiny dolls, and the dark figure that had haunted my nights. "What is he talking about?" Brian asked, his eyes wide with confusion. I wanted to explain, but I didn't want to frighten him even more. Instead, I just shook my head, trying to listen to the man's ramblings. "He saw them. They made me crash," the driver cried out, his voice echoing in the night. "The dolls. They were in the road, and that black figure, it was watching me." Just then, the blaring sirens of police cars filled the air, their lights flashing through our window. The commotion outside intensified, and we heard officers calling out, searching for the driver. But when they arrived, the yard revealed nothing but a case of Bud Light and a trail of footprints leading away from the scene. The driver continued his panicked cries, but the police seemed baffled, unable to comprehend his ramblings about dolls and shadows. After a tense few minutes, the paramedics arrived and began tending to him, while officers tried to piece together the incident. Once the chaos subsided and the officers left, a heavy silence settled over our home. Brian and I lay in our beds, still wide awake, the adrenaline coursing through our veins. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for us. "Do you think it's true?" Brian finally asked, his voice trembling. "About the dolls and the black figure?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I think it might be," I admitted, my heart racing at the thought of the horrors I had faced before. "But let's just try to go to sleep. Maybe it was just a bad dream." As we tried to settle back into our beds, sleep eluded us. The air grew heavy, and I could feel an unseen presence creeping into the room. Just when I thought we might finally drift off, it happened. From the corner of the room, I heard the soft sound of tiny footsteps, a familiar sound that sent chills down my spine. I turned to Brian, who was staring wide-eyed at the shadows gathering in the corners. "Stevie, what's happening?" he gasped, clutching his blanket. I didn't have an answer. I felt the weight of the night pressing down on us, and soon the tiny evil dolls began to emerge from the darkness, their hard, shiny eyes glinting with wicked intent as they arranged themselves in a menacing line, shortest to tallest, just as the driver had described. The room grew colder, and I could hear them breathing, a slow, sinister sound that filled the space with palpable dread. The dolls' plastic footsteps echoed against the wooden floor, each step deliberate and mocking, as if they were savoring our fear. Their eyes were cold and unfeeling, reflecting nothing but malice and hunger. "Look who's awake," one of them hissed. its voice barely above a whisper but laced with venom. "We've come to play." Brian clutched my arm, his grip tight with fear. "Stevie, what do we do?" he pleaded, his voice trembling. I felt paralyzed, unable to move or speak. The dolls advanced slowly, their laughter echoing in the darkness, a chilling melody that filled the air with the dread. I could see their mouths moving, forming silent taunts, each one a reminder of the horrors that haunted us. Then, just behind them, I saw it, the large black silhouette, looming in the shadows like a dark storm cloud. It was massive, a presence that seemed to absorb all light around it and radiated a terrible energy. Faintly, I could see red and green orbs flickering within its depths, casting an eerie glow that illuminated the doll's twisted features. But just when I thought we might have a chance, the dolls surged forward, their tiny feet pounding against the floor in a frenzy, their breaths growing louder and more frantic. "You can't escape us," they taunted, their eyes glinting with malevolent joy. The room felt suffocating as the dolls encircled us once more, their intent clear. They wanted to hurt us, to plunge us back into the nightmare from which we had tried to flee. The oppressive darkness wrapped around us like a shroud, and I could feel my resolve wavering. As dawn broke, the first light seeping through the curtains, I lay in bed, heart racing, unable to shake the feeling of dread. Brian was silent, his eyes wide and unblinking, the terror of the night still etched on his face. We got out of bed, the calm morning light doing little to ease the heaviness in our chests. After a long sleepless night filled with echoes of whispers and shadowy figures, we trudged downstairs to join our parents, who were busy loading the car with boxes and bags for the new house. "Ready to go?" our dad asked, smiling brightly, unaware of the darkness that had haunted us. I exchanged a glance with Brian, and though we nodded, the weight of the previous night lingered in the back of our minds. As we climbed into the car, the sunlight felt strangely warm, but I couldn't shake the sense that the dolls and the black apparition were still out there, waiting, biding their time. The morning was calm, but as we pulled away from the house, I knew that the saga of East Smoot Road was far from over. The darkness would follow us just beyond the horizon, lurking in the shadows, ready to return when we least expected it.